Hello and welcome. Can you hear me? Yes, you can. The audio is here. Welcome to a magical Monday. I am playing with my lights, as you can see. It's sun beaming in on me. I'm in a new setting in Hawaii without any of my equipment, and so it is what it is. So thank you for your patience. Please like, share. My name is Markabadi. This is a live, inspirational, common unity collaboration show. It's all about providing a space for people, luminaries and wisdom keepers, to share their wisdom and for us to discuss how their perspective on wisdom interacts with ours and how we can use it to advance our wellness and our being. Today we have Pyasa, Neko, Siff. She is a wonderful being focused on lifting the veil on the social and sexual conditioning which keeps humanity limited and depressed, while simultaneously exploring what true sovereignty looks like and how we can get there. Pyasa is an evolutionary activator who supports people through various mediums to deprogram, and I was thinking maybe even decolonize, deprogram themselves and discover their innate personal power. You can find more at intimacyadventure.com. So without further ado, let's go over to Pyasa.
Yeah.
Pyasa, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Mark. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here.
You're welcome. I do have to tell new and old friends that I go by Markabadi. It's my full name rather than Mark, but that's okay. Whatever.
All right, Markabadi.
Whatever rocks the boat.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Welcome. Where are you?
Thank you. I am currently in Costa Rica, where I got stuck after having a retreat here in February. So I've been here still because I live in Ecuador for the last 9 years, and the borders have been closed, and it's pretty nice to be here. So I'm just feeling deeply grateful for having been planted here right now.
Right. Excellent.
Yeah.
And you know, your description, it was a very generic kind of like helping people to deprogram. And there's been a lot of talk about this colonization and decolonizing ourselves. Is that something that you use in a terminology?
Not necessarily. I talk a lot about, what do I talk about? I talk about sovereignty.
Okay.
You know, so yeah, sovereignty in the sense of meaning self-governing. So yeah, get the colony out of there, get the programming out of there, get the false trainings that have come from our societies, our churches, our countries, our nations, our government, our families, and our ancestors. So really clearing that out so that we can find out who we are as sovereign beings.
How do we know what's false in the training and what's real? I mean, you know, one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist, right?
Yes, and so I've been speaking on a lot of stages, in particular anarchy gatherings, and I just want to say something about that. So anarchy as sovereignty means self-governed, and right now at this moment the word anarchy is being used in the news, I know, and so I just really want to put that definition out there, because the movement that I've been involved in is about self-responsibility. So, you know, looking at our own selves and finding our own authenticity and being self-governed and decentralizing things so that we can work more, you know, in smaller communities to create change.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what, you've been working with systems rather than individuals? Or how does this relate?
Okay, here, let's take it back. So I'm a somatic sexologist, and among many other things. And I wrote a book. It's called The Intimacy Adventure Playbook, 33 Provocative Explorations for a Deeper, Hotter Love Connection. So I'm interested in communication, connection, intimacy, helping people get out of their heads and into their bodies, to really occupy their own bodies, their hearts, their minds, and to learn how to have presence and to, you know, so a lot of that is deconditioning what we've been taught, even about touch. right? There's ways that we have learned how to interact that are based on our early childhood experiences that predict how we're going to act in relationship or in our sexuality. So I work with individuals. I work with clients on now mostly online.
Right.
And but I also do workshops. I lead groups and retreats. And yeah, I do have some on the plan coming up. I've had to cancel a few.
Right.
But
so your
yeah.
your version of like deprogramming would be towards a program of self-responsibility, and that would be your sort of compass point of what is true and what's not.
Can get kind of tricky. Well, I think that the more that we really occupy our bodies and occupy our hearts, we're going to have true integrity. And integrity doesn't really need so many rules, right? We know what is, we have a moral compass, if that makes sense. So, it's like, discovering what it is that governs us and really questioning our reality. Yeah. But I'm also talking on a neurological level. So, there's ways that we get trained by the ways, that our parents, despite the ways that they might have our best intention or their best intentions for us, that we get trained to basically go along with somebody else's agenda. Mm-hmm. So we end up growing up to be basically perpetual people pleasers, right? Ooh. And so we say yes when we want to say no. And so we go along with other things. So we're not really living in a very authentic way. So there's ways to look at that and actually retrain our neural networks, because our neural networks get, we go down grooves, by habit and pattern, right? We create grooves in our neural networking.
Right.
And so that just becomes our default system. So when we can start to uncover through exploration, and, like I was saying, that's what I do with the individuals or groups. We start to explore these things and then uncover, and then by creating grooves in our neural network.
Sorry, that's me.
And so that just becomes our default system.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, that was me.
What was I saying? By uncovering that, right? By lifting the veil on these things, we can then have a choice if we want to create a new habit pattern, and then through practice we create habits, right?
Right.
And that becomes our new system. That becomes our new neurological system, right?
Yes.
So that's what I'm talking about. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
You have more for me now?
Absolutely. There's always more. So,
okay.
With relation to, you mentioned two words which, are very high on my own approach: integrity and authenticity. Now, neither of them actually say anything about what integrity. The word means that it's basically, it is solid in itself. It is self-contained and all of the parts support itself. It's kind of a bit like coherence. It means that there is, like, the structure itself is supporting the rest of the structure. So it means you are doing what you say you're doing. And the same with authenticity. You can be authentically an asshole. Now, how does that work? Because you can be both integral and authentic and still be an asshole.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Great. So, Osho, who has been one of my influential teachers in my life, he said, if you're an asshole, be an asshole. Right? So we're not wanting to edit who we are. We want to be authentic. But then if we start to delve into, like, why am I acting like an asshole, right? We might discover that might just be a defense, or, something that I learned or picked up along the way. So that if we combine the two, the authenticity and the integrity, and we really uncover, well, what is, why am I an asshole? Maybe because I'm angry, right?
I think what I hear you saying is, it's okay, once you realize you're an asshole, there are ways to move with it. But it's the people who don't realize that they are, I want a better term than asshole, but, they are, evil, that they are perpetuating,
or passive aggressive,
or they're perpetuating endemic racism, for example. You know, they might not know it. Like, you've got a lot of these Trump supporters who are, you know, and it's not just the Trump supporters, but you've got a lot of these people who are in the kind of rah 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 of it all, and kind of like, yeah, fuck them and this, and there's no heart to it. So from their perspective, they're not being assholes. They're just being true. They're being integral with their own beliefs, and they're being authentic with what they believe. So
with their own beliefs, yeah.
So like, who is the beacon point? Like, how do we say one person is okay? Look, everyone's going to go by my measure now of what is nice and what's not, or what's, you know, how do we help people be nice? Because integrity and authenticity is one way for them to be themselves, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're going to be nice themselves.
Well, I guess then we could talk about, but I'm not sure that I'm ready to go there, our innate self, you know, I mean, or I guess I could say, you know, our innate, who we are innately, we are divine beings, you know, incarnated into bodies. And we've had experiences that create the patterns and the ways that we exist and the way that we act in the world, right? So I don't know, I would still say all of that is still the conditioning, what you just spoke of, you know, people who are rah, 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 and that's going along with their own, you know, integrity. They believe that by acting that out, you know, that is them being in alignment with their integrity. So I guess I'm wanting to create a call to get a little deeper than that and go beyond the conditioning, right? Because I hear what you're saying. So that could be confusing. Right. You know, we are manipulated and controlled by our traumas. And that's something that I speak a lot about is, you know, we've all experienced trauma, some big, some small. And, you know, trauma could be getting a haircut when you're, you know, 1 year old and you don't want that haircut.
Or circumcision.
Right? Yes. And this is, I started creating, I've been working on what is it called? A documentary about circumcision. And that is one of the biggest traumas that happens. And so let me speak about that for a moment, you know, and not just in the sense of circumcision, but we can use it as an example. Is that when that baby is tied down to a board, that infant male, and now I'm talking about infant male circumcision, it also happens to women in certain religions, right? So it's a custom in certain religions. But let's talk about infant male circumcision. So when they're tied down to a board and they have nowhere to go, they can't get away. And a part of their body is taken away from them in a very violent way with no or very little anesthesia, right? So
certainly no permission.
What happens, they have to submit. So this is one of the first steps in training people to go along with somebody else's agenda. So, you know, it's like you can't get away, so that in the future, well, let me back up and just explain what happens on a chemical level, is when we go into fight, flight, or freeze, when we experience a threat, we can go into fight, flight, or freeze, and what's happening is that there are chemicals and hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, that are getting dumped into the system. And this happens with any kind of threat. What determines if it's going to become a trauma that gets frozen in the cells of your body, is because trauma is a physiological experience, is whether you can flee, right? If you can fight it, or if you can fight or take flight, then those chemicals get worked out through your system. When that cannot happen, when we have to freeze, right? Or we fawn, which is again going along with somebody else's agenda, then those chemicals get stuck in the body, and that becomes a trauma. So if that baby is locked down, there's no choice but for it to get stuck in their system. And, you know, back in the day, before people had any awareness, I guess, I don't know, but doctors said that babies don't feel that, right? And so what doctors discovered later, they're so smart, is, oh wow, actually they do feel. And when they're like laying there and look like they're sleeping, they're actually in such a deep state of freeze that they look like they're sleeping. But in fact, just touching a baby anywhere on its skin, they feel it in their entire body, if you just touch them in one place. So you know, and that actually brings me to something that I'd like to talk about today too, is what is happening right now is there's so much re-traumatization because everybody on a collective level is feeling that they are out of control, or there is a lot that is, but it's only seemingly, and I'd like to go there too. It's that things are, you know, we are victims and things are out of our control and somebody else is dictating what's happening. So any traumas that have not been processed through the system are getting re-triggered right now. And it's coming up and it's really in the collective field, you know? So I really believe that transforming or transcending our trauma, not transcending, but releasing that from our systems, for everybody, for the circumcised baby, for anybody who's ever experienced a trauma, which is hard to avoid.
Right. Exactly.
It's important to cycle through our, to sequence, right? To complete the sequence so that we're not still stuck in that. And that way we will be able to be present and to meet this moment, this incredible moment that we are being presented with right now as a collective. And I have a lot that I'd like to mention about that, which would bring us in a little bit of a different direction. But it's still along the same lines, actually.
Whatever's good. I would like to understand how people, obviously processing trauma is, I think everyone would agree, processing trauma sounds like a great thing to do. But what does that actually mean? Does it mean letting go of the trauma? And what does letting go mean? Or you know, what is the actual process? Is it loving the trauma? Is it crying your eyes out for a month about the trauma? Is it punching someone in the face about the trauma? Like, what is processing the trauma?
Okay. Yeah, processing the trauma or sequencing the event is, because that's what happens on a physiological level. My medicine is shaking. I have been gifted for somehow the medicine of shaking. It just came into my life and it taught me, it's just an understanding, an inner standing that came to me at one point, and I started to then research it because I experienced my own traumas. We all have. I had a good amount of trauma as a child. So I started shaking and I started to notice that there was a difference in my body. And so what I started doing was researching, and then now I have much more information than just from that inspiration that came. So, for example, when an animal is chased in the wild, they will go off into, you know, when they get away from the threat, they will go and they will shake, right? And what they're doing is they're sequencing that event. They're getting the cortisol and the adrenaline and all of that to work through their system so that now they can be present time again, right? So shaking, and also, you know, when you said, what does that look like? That looks like, in some of my groups, that looks like being blindfolded, screaming, crying, yelling at the top of your lungs to loud music, so that you can eventually, you know, work a lot of that out of the system, because whatever has not been expressed becomes repressed, right? And that's when we eventually become depressed, which we know that there's so much depression in the world. And in my opinion, if we had a padded room, a padded soundproof room in, you know, like every town where people could go and express themselves, we wouldn't be in such a mess, because people would not be so depressed because they would be expressing themselves and it wouldn't be stuck. So what it looks like to me my opinion, just my perspective and the methods that I use with, individuals and groups is shaking and emotional release and being witnessed. It's like we don't want to get lost in our stories, and it's really powerful to get witnessed in our story, to share our story, to even be able to open up the voice and talk about what people have experienced is a powerful, transformative process.
Yes.
So those are some things, and
yeah. So it seems like the expression of the trauma is vital, and our society is very much one on it's not encouraging expression of trauma. In fact, it kind of wants to sweep it. And then you're saying sound and movement, so expressive. But then also you brought in a very interesting element about being witnessed. And this is something that I've witnessed in hosting these interviews, is that by asking people questions and by interviewing them, in a way, it is the highest form of witnessing. It is pure space to allow the person to be fully witnessed. What is it you have to share? Asking questions. So I'm noticing that this interview technique is also helping people process and be seen. So how much do you think people need to be seen versus go off by themselves into a padded room where they're isolated and hidden and secretively and explode there? Like, how important is the witness of the other?
I don't know if I could put it on a scale or something. But yeah, I think that both are important. Developing our connection with the earth, with Pachamama, with our mother here, and have a conversation with her, as well as utilizing the community, and community being witnessed in the community is what I mean by that. And
right.
Our community can be a retreat, that is your community in that moment. And then you have, your community where you live, your community, we have the broader community, so actually, in what some of the practices that I use are having also people maybe explore where they are on medicine. It's like you can look at it as a circle, say, and how are you moving within your individual self, with your partners, within your local community, and universal or global. It's like we can work in all of those places. It's not, one is not exclusive to the other. They're all important.
All right, good. So you said that it was a... Say again.
Oh, nothing.
You said there was another direction you wanted to take things in.
Yeah. But actually, there's a few words from some. I have a poem here that I wrote, or I'd like to say it came through me and I edited it. I just edited it. I feel like a scribe sometimes, and so I just there's something that I wanted to share from this that speaks to what we were just talking about. It's just maybe as a closure to that. So it goes like this. This is just a piece of this poem. It's not the things we own that define. Give it up before it's taking. Our world is splitting. Our earth, she's shaking. This paradigm's getting tossed like a flea, but it's only illusion lost. Patterns deeply ingrained into the psyche. It's a shifting, it's a sifting through this muddled confusion. Thank God us it's lifting. Here's the important part, actually. It can leave us raw memories coming back so they can be let go, because it's not really true that what you don't know can't hurt you. It's frozen in the cells. It's the environment. It's the chemical climate that you're living in, aware of it or not. So take the old pain and hold it up to the light. Shine your love into the darkest of places. Make room for ease to fill the spaces, right? So yeah, it's frozen in the cells. It's an environment. It's a chemical climate that we're living in, aware of it or not. So, I just really want to encourage humanity to recognize, because, there's also so much division that's being created right now. You talked about, you mentioned Trump, and, I'm not into any political party. I'm just like, I think that the division is being created by both sides right now, by all sides right now. And that what we need is to come to a place of unity. And so the direction I want to take it in might maybe kind of explain what I want to share here.
Uh-huh.
So in 2011, I was initiated as a 4th level healer in the Andean Cosmovision by the Queros people of Peru, and as a Paco, yeah. And so in the lineage of Don Humberto and Doña Bernardina with their sons Rolando and Guillermo. So I was initiated, and what part of this initiation is waking up seed that is already within me that I couldn't say, but I think that these seeds are in all of us. Right. But this initiation was about that. And so, like I said, as a 4th level healer, so I want to just explain, I'm going to share some Quechua words with you today, because Quechua, like Sanskrit, is super deep. And, brings some things that the English language doesn't really express so much.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So the Queros are talking about, or they're considered the last living Incas, and during the Spanish Inquisition, they went up into the mountains, and they did not get affected by the Inquisition. Their practices, their traditions were preserved, right? They didn't get the interference from the Catholic religion coming in. Yeah. So what they hold is the Andean cosmovision, right? The cosmovision, the way that they see the world. And there's a few words I wanted to share here. So first of all, I want to say 4th level healer. So they say that we've been living in the 3rd level. And this level is the stage of adolescence. And there's no shame in that, but we do need to mature, and we're moving into the 4th level, and we're even going into the 5th and the 6th. And in the 4th level, it's beyond separation. It's when we recognize all of our brothers and sisters as part of one human global family, right? So they've been talking about this for centuries, and probably way, way, way longer than that, right? I just don't know how long, how many years to say that. But so we're coming from the time of the world turned upside down, this time of separation, into the time of the age of meeting ourselves again, right? And they've said that now is the time, that they have noticed the signals, and now is the time. This is where we are right now. We are going through, and these are my words, going through a harsh transition into what they recognize to be the age of meeting ourselves again. And so I wanted to share that. And I'll let you ask me any questions if you want before I go on, because I have a few words I want to share.
Well, you talk about words to share. I'm interested when you say that, questions come to mind when people talk.
Yeah.
So one of the ones is how much do we need language, the appropriate language, to be able to express the trauma? Like, how much do we have to have the right language? Is that the first starting point? Like, there are words in different cultures. Like, most of our language originates from Sanskrit, at least the European languages. And so in what way do we need to identify with the etymology of language before we can really start to provide space for interpreting and living the emotions? It's actually an age-old psychological question, like which comes first, thought or language? And so in a way, I'm taking it back and I'm saying, which comes first, processing the trauma or the language to describe the trauma?
I think from my perspective, anybody going to a talk therapist trying to work out their traumas, we've seen, I think there's probably people out there who have had the experience themselves or know other people that have been talking about the trauma, and it doesn't shift much. it's a physiological experience. So
Right.
it's it's about emotional intelligence, and it's physiological, kinesthetic, it's chemical, right? So but I did say that the witnessing is important. So sharing, we could share our story through dance, and just being witnessed in our dance. We can express a tremendous amount through dance and movement. So I could ask you, how are you feeling? And just have you express it through your movement.
That's how I'm feeling at the moment. There's an interesting aspect of expressing through somatics, through the body dance system. Because this notion that the trauma is encoded somewhere in the brain, right?
Yeah.
Can you say something about where do we encode trauma? Like, where do we encode it?
Where do we encode?
Or where does it store?
Trauma.
Where does this trauma exist?
Well, it can take it. It affects the vagus nerve. It becomes. Where does it get stored? I mean, it becomes our patterns. Do you know what I mean? When we experience a trauma, now I have a certain way of being.
Right. Whenever
I experience something that might remind me of that trauma, for example, feeling out of control.
Yes.
So then I have a certain response, because I'm, just getting re-triggered back into that.
So where are these? Right? Where are these memories of the trauma? Are they in the brain? Are they in the left bicep?
It's chemical. I would say a lot of it is chemical.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's things that happen over time from like having a lot of adrenaline, cortisol in your system that is going to affect your nervous system, your organs of your body. Like people who have had trauma are much more predisposed to major dis-ease, right? Yes. Later in life because of those chemicals. But there's more to it. But I'm a somatic sexologist, so I'm not a doctor or
Let's get off the
or a traumatologist. I'm not a traumatologist, although I'm very trauma informed, and that's how I work with individuals.
Okay, let's get off the physiology. Tell us more about the predictions of the Inuit. It was Inuits, was it?
No. The Keros. The Keros. So I just wanted to say a few things, because I feel like it's really pertinent to right now for me. Like when you asked me, what is my passion right now? Like, what do I feel passionate about? I feel very excited about these times that we are in, because I do believe that despite the challenge, I believe that it's bringing so much division up into our awareness, the racism, so much into our awareness, so that we can re-examine this, and hopefully, I'm rooting for move through this and raise to a higher frequency. So, and like, I was saying that the Keros are talking about moving from the third level into the fourth, right? And then the fifth, and then the sixth. So, in their cosmovision, in the way that they see the world, there's only one law in the universe, and that law is called Aini, and that's a Quechua word for sacred reciprocity.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and I think this has we could look at that on all levels. Sacred reciprocity between humans, between us as humanity, and how we live with our planet here. Yeah. So when I say sacred reciprocity, meaning that when I give something, then I will also receive. And when I receive, I will also give. This is the natural flow of energy. And according to the Keros, and Aini, this law, this only law that exists, is that needs to stay in balance, right? And when that gets out of balance, we're basically in a lot of trouble. And that's where we've been finding ourselves now. So, and I also wanted to mention the word Kausai. Kausai is the word for living energy, this entire world, all matter is living energy. And I'm very excited about physics. I really love, not that I can lay down any, theories super well. I'm more kinesthetic, but I do notice, I like to read stuff about physics, and I do notice that physics is starting to acknowledge or confirm this word, this reality of calci, that everything is living energy. And so what one is taught as a wisdom keeper in the Kero lineage, right, is to push the calci, right? That we, through our intention, in working with the power of our body, the power of our mind, and the power of our hearts, we can push the calci. We can push the living energy with our intention, with this trinity, to go in the direction that we would like it to go. And I just wanted to bring this up because I think that this is really important. And some people might call this spiritual bypassing or whatever. But these are traditions. These are understandings that wisdom keepers have held throughout time. And I feel that it's important for us to understand that.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit that I want to say.
Great.
Right,
I mean,
there.
There's the understanding of it. How do people utilize this in a practical way?
Okay, so there's a meditation that I've been teaching for many years that the Keros taught me, and it has to do with releasing hucha.
Hucha.
Hucha, and hucha is any heavy energy. So in the Andean cosmovision, nothing is good or bad, right? We're not talking about good or bad. If things are heavy, or they're pure and refined. So we have heavy energy that might where anger and rage and hatred and things like this. These are heavy energies. Sadness, those are heavy energies. And then we have Sami, what is called Sami. This is pure, refined energy, right? So what the Keros would like people to do, and this is why I really want to bring this today, is because I was taught that now that you know this, it's your responsibility to share it. And I think that it's so important. If anybody gets this today or in this replay, this practice, I feel that it's a service to the world. It's a service. It is helping to balance the Aini, the sacred reciprocity. So Hucha, it's hot here. Hucha, got my grandma's hanky. So Hucha is heavy energy, right? So heavy energy, Sami, pure refined energy. We have our Pakto, which is our energy field. That's like Andean for your energy field, or Quechua, sorry, for your energy field. You have your Pakpo. This is your energy field around you. So we fill ourselves with Sami, and we release Hucha. And animals, plants, they don't carry hucha. Only humans carry hucha, right? And so this again goes back to releasing our traumas. We can think, like visualize an event that we didn't sequence and became a trauma, and we just want to release the anger and the sadness and all of that. This is another way of working on the energetic planes to release that. So actually, I don't need to go too deeply into that. I do have a YouTube video that I could share the links with, where I guide people through this meditation. But essentially, it's just receiving pure refined energy and releasing the hucha, and we're offering it to Pachamama. And this might sound a little strange, but she is the recycler. So there's the Uku Pacha, the world that lives below us, and the Uku Pacha receives all of that and just transforms it,
Kind of like turns it back into molten lava and reforms it.
Something like that, perhaps. Yeah, I can't say I exactly know, but they do ask.
So just back to releasing the hucha. So releasing it. What is releasing? Because releasing could be I'm very angry with you, and this is me releasing my hucha at you. dishi da da. Now that's clearly not what they're talking about in that essence.
No.
So what does releasing actually mean with regards to the heaviness, the hucha?
Well, okay. In this meditation, it is an energetic. It's all energetic. It's working with the kausai, with the living energy. So I'm using visualization. I'm using breath to release, to let go. Right? Does that answer your question? So it's an energetic practice.
I suppose you know what? There's a lot of people ask about, like, the question I taught meditation 20 years, and the most common question is, how do I let go? Because people, they're not used to letting go. And in the same way, it's like, how do I process? How do I surrender? How do I take the emotion and the trauma and honor it while simultaneously asking it to fuck off? You see how people's minds, they go in like, I want rid of the pain. But there's a certain acceptance of it that needs to come first. Is there? I mean, that's what I'm asking. So, like, what is the process of the releasing of yourself from being entrapped by your trauma?
Well, wait a minute. I'm getting a lot of sun on my leg over here. I'm just going to cover that up. Let's see. The first things that come to my mind are, acknowledging, loving what is. You know, I love Byron Katie. She says, oh gosh, what is the quote? Maybe it'll come back to me. It's a really good one. But, you know, about loving what is. And, you know, what is happened. So when we resist, resistance is really contraction. And that shows up in our physical body. So how do we let go? Well, one way, salud otra vez. So one way, from my perspective, to let go is to learn how to relax, right? To relax our nervous system, because our nervous systems are wired. And, you know, so many of us are just racing along, you know, wired up. So relaxing to, you know, expansion, the concept of expansion, right? And so how do we let go? Maybe we learn how to breathe. We learn how to relax. We learn how to come present time in our bodies. And that might mean as we're coming back into the body, where many of us haven't been inhabiting for very long or very often, that might mean that then we go through those, there might be waves of sadness, you know, as I've done a lot of healing. And I have to say, like, I've spent, who knows, you could say like months and months, like if you just like put it all together, like solid months of just crying, right? And I know that wasn't all just mine also. That was, you know, like I'm coming from a Jewish Russian lineage, you know, there were aren't we all, darling? Ancestors, right, coming behind me who I don't think were releasing all of that stuff. So here it all is with me. And so releasing that and, you know, sadness about the world, my own personal sadness, and on, right? Yeah. So there's, I mean, there is an honoring, right, of the hucha. People feel, I think, they feel scared and worried that allowing the hucha, the heaviness, to be felt will mean that they will become it more. And so their technique maybe is to push it away and avoid it. But we're talking now about allowing it in, right? Accepting it, feeling it. The only way out is through.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and what do we say to people who are worried about it taking them over, like them becoming a dark person?
Yeah. Well, going back to. You know, this understanding from the Andean cosmovision that nothing is good or bad.
Right.
So to release judgment around these emotions, it's just, you could look at it, these are heavy, these are light. I feel heavy, I feel light. So how do you lighten your load? You let it go, you release it. It's a release to cry. You know, when we cry, We have chemicals coming out in our tears that relieve the system, right? Actually, that's an understanding that we have from a scientific point of view. Anger is that, anger is something, here's a good thing. Anger is something that comes like a fire, actually. But if we don't release it, anger comes and goes. When we've had a boundary crossed, right? Then we get angry. If we don't express it, if we just say, "Oh yes, that's okay," we're the people pleaser. We're afraid to use our voices, and we're afraid to say that's not okay with me.
Right.
Then we actually end up becoming angry people, right? So the anger was there for a moment, but when we don't express it and it becomes repressed, it then can take us over, and we become angry.
Right. So
all the time.
The lack of expression could lead to the takeover.
Exactly. Yeah. To the takeover. That's a good choice of words. I like that. Yes. It's a takeover.
So and there's an element of trust, right? That has to be there in order to surrender to feeling.
Yeah, I think that we need to feel safe, and that's something that's very difficult, when we've experienced trauma and we don't, feel safe within our relationships that we've now chosen, that have all been chosen through the patterns that we have been ingrained through our experiences and through our ancestors, or what we've seen modeled from our families, then maybe we didn't choose the best container as relationships or friends or what. So the trust. So the only one you can really trust is yourself. To me, that's an ultimate truth. And it does matter, that we want to be validated. We want to be accepted for who we are and all of our different expressions.
Right.
So I would say that, it's just really important to have a safe container, or to be in places where maybe that's a place where, like my workshops, that this is a place that you come to let this go, to release it. And it's not over in one workshop, by the way. This is a journey. As anybody who's been on this path would know, this is a journey, that, you might also finish with your own, and now you're going to work with your families, and now you're going to work with the earth, and it's like an onion, and this is what we came here for. And, I've been saying, I actually started writing a poem yesterday, and I think the title of it is going to be Evolution is the Revolution, and it cannot be televised. Right?
That's interesting that you bring up that it cannot be televised. We had an interesting discussion with the rabbi here about the notion of, we were creating a ceremonial event down in the bushes here, and there was trees and sacred events, and I was like, oh, I need my camera to film this, and he'd stopped and he said, well, there's some element in not recording this. There's something sacred in being completely present in this moment that will never be captured again, that can never be seen by anyone else, that is sacred for just you and I here with the trees, with the nature. And so that's a very interesting point that you bring up about the not televising, because the first thing we want to do is grab our camera, take a picture, and video it.
Some people do, yeah. But that's you. Okay. Yeah, that hasn't been me really.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't say it won't be, it cannot be.
Yeah.
So let me say it again. The evolution, your evolution, is the revolution, and it cannot be televised, because you cannot, how are you going to televise your evolution? It's an internal process, right?
I was thinking like a camera strapped to the chest, like at 3 foot out, and just follows you around, and like you sleep with it, and it watches you snore and stuff, and then it just films you 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also agree that's probably not a good idea. Okay, amazing. Thanks for sharing all this wisdom. You're doing some workshops where you hold the space. Oh, I'm sorry. What you were saying brings it back to the witness, to being witnessed, to having a safe space to be witnessed, to feel safe to express. And I suppose the real safety in expression requires the witness, because somewhere you have to trust the other and the other recognizing that the other is a part of you. And so maybe just doing it by yourself in a cave somewhere only gives you half the picture. Whereas really the real trust is when you can be with other beings,
right,
and trust yourself and thus anything outside of yourself.
Well, that is a really beautiful situation when that can happen. And if people aren't there yet, mirror work is really powerful. Just looking into the mirror and working with yourself. I do some things where I have people work with one eye or the other, because this is the masculine and the feminine. And, there's ways that we can do work in the mirror for working with our own neural networks, or just, looking in the mirror and saying, I love you. For some people, that's going to bring some hardcore tears, to really authentically say that. Or, like we were just talking about videoing. It's really powerful sometimes, or it can be, for people to video themselves.
Absolutely.
Make a video, talk into that video, talk to yourself in that video and play it back to yourself. That's some powerful shit. Yeah.
Cool. And so tell us what you're doing workshop-wise. Have you got online workshops that people can join?
Oh, thanks for saying that. Yes, I forgot. I do have an online one coming up. I'm a mentor on Rise Multiversity. And so I do have a 3-part class that I'm going to do. Now I'm just not remembering the name of it, but it was such a good name. I love to play with words. It was something.
And when's that class coming?
Rewire, Reboot, Rejoice, something like that. So, and it had more. I don't know exactly. I'm working with them. They're going to be televising that for me. So I'm not sure, but I could share the links with you.
Cool.
Oh, I know. If people wanted to sign up as on my newsletter,
right?
Absolutely. That's where I would let people
there
know.
You go.
I also have a thank you. Yeah, I'm keeping this all together. So I have retreats happening in Europe, but they're all canceled, and we keep talking about, extending it. So, but I don't feel very certain at this moment that I'm going to commit to things. So online is good. If people sign up on my newsletter, they go to intimacyadventure.com.
Yeah.
You will get also my shaking. I've hopefully got it dialed still, that my email will then send you
a special shake session.
Some music that I made with Vinaya for people to use, that they can download, and teaching about shaking.
Shaking is interesting.
Right, like we're taught to keep it together, right? Like you go through something, something was scary, and even since a little child, they're like, oh, it's okay, hold it together, just keep it together, Like we are not encouraged to just let that tremor, because it's an innate tremor response, actually, that we can access through shaking. So I teach people how to access that by faking it until they make it, right?
Fake the shake till you make the shake.
Yes, exactly. Fake it till you make it, shake it. And so I created music that people can access through my newsletter.
Great.
And they'll get that for free when they sign up on the newsletter. So yeah, I have something coming up on Rise Multiversity, and I'm going to be doing a retreat here. Like, so many connections are coming together, actually.
And you're in Costa Rica.
Stuck here. Yeah.
Amazing.
But I don't know when. But if people, again, sign up on my newsletter, that's where I put out the information.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. I connected you to Matthew Human and that, didn't I?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
There's quite a few other good cats there. Ian Michael's there as well at the moment.
Yeah.
Definitely reach out to those people I connected you to on Facebook, and they're good connects. Well, thank you, Pyasa. Thank you for coming on and sharing your shake.
Thank you.
Sharing your shake. It's been a great pleasure. I don't get too hot over there. And
thank you. Yeah.
And now I'll just close out. Wow, a wonderful Magic Monday. Lots of distractions over the weekend. It's hot and sunny here in Hawaii. I think the key here is about courage, and it's courage to feel the emotions that you're feeling, the heaviness, the hucha, and to allow it to be expressed in any way it can. And movement is important. So shaking, moving, dancing, allowing the somatic expression of the emotions to be felt so that we can move into a loving acceptance and feeling safe within ourselves. Resistance is obviously futile.
Resistance is futile.
Resistance is not serving. It serves to compress us and to hold in the trauma inside our body. And that's really what most of us are dealing with, is compressed trauma that hasn't had a safe space to be expressed. So if you can find that safe space with facilitators, with mentors, or with your friends, where you can give yourself permission to feel safe enough and then to be witnessed being safe, that seems to be a good key for self-empowerment and self-alignment. Cool. Thank you to my guest Pyasa. You can find her stuff on intimacyadventure.com. I have a book Evolve, Markabadi.com. I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.